Hello and welcome to Unsourced Wall. My name is Elvis, and as always, I am your host. Okay, so this is going to be kind of a short one, but now that Halloween is over, we have no extra Halloween blowout review, so it's back to normal for at least now. Let's get on into news. There's only really one thing I want to talk about, and that is a really big one. It's with a heavy heart that I have to talk about the passing of the great John Witherspoon. Perhaps most recently widely known for playing Granddad on the animated adaptation of the Boondocks comic strip, and he's been a staple of comedy movies and shows for so many childhoods, be it the dad from Friday, Pops from the Wayans Bros, as well as that insanely unforgettable street vendor who gives little Nicky the crazy eyes. In all of his roles, he was always energetic, lively, and audacious. He was a brilliant performer, and the world is less bright without him in it. And I hope that he rests in peace and that his loved ones find solace and closure in this really harrowing time. So my heart goes out to them and to everyone who knew him. And I just want to say thank you for giving the world so much joy. Outside of that, there's only one or two really interesting things to talk about, such as the HBO Max streaming service announcing 2 new DC Universe stemming original shows, like the announcement of a Green Lantern quasi-anthology. It's rumored that to be centered on all the main Lanterns, with a couple episodes being devoted to either one of them in a rotating cast-style format, which sounds interesting and I wish it the best. The second one is a series called Strange Adventures, which is also going to be an anthology series, and it's going to be centered around the everyday goings-on in the DC Universe, different C-listers, and the common citizen in these cities. So, that also sounds like it could be pretty cool, so fingers crossed for that one too. After that, there's not really that much to go into, so let's just head on into what I read this week. First off, we have The Sandman Presents Hellblazer #1, which is the newest relaunch for the Hellblazer franchise, and it's a pretty damn good one. Coming from Cy Spurrier, with art by Marcio Takara, Hellblazer picks up the saga of the supernatural conman himself, John Constantine, and it just storms out the gate. It makes it clear that this isn't exactly the same John we last saw being sentenced into some sort of pseudo afterlife as an old man. In fact, it's someone entirely new, although quite familiar. It's a John based more on his mid-90s characterization, specifically from a flash forward at the end of the Books of Magic miniseries from the 90s. But he is brought forward through the sliding timeline and bypassing all the reboots. The book does a good job of acknowledging how ridiculous that is and how nonsensical it actually comes off, but taking it face value and making sure to set down that it's just the way it's going to be, and that it's clearing the slate, as it were. And it's really stellar about it. Spurrier nails the personality and atmosphere that the Hellblazer series should have, more than anything that John has been a part of in almost a decade now. It's scathing, it's cynical, it's timely, and it's gut-wrenchingly self-reflective. It's all set up for an ongoing, so it's really just backgrounding. But as a way to introduce new readers and recontextualize things for old fans, it gets the job done. It's a shame that Takara won't be joining the actual ongoing series, because their art was fantastic, but I hope that Spurrier will at least keep some of his cool and not suffocate under the weight of his own self-indulgences, because this was actually pretty tight, pretty pragmatic, and honestly very restrained, and it worked for the best, because John isn't that kind of character where you can have like 3 different pages about the etymology of something and how punny it is. So I at least hope that we get one solid arc before the craziness that Spurrier loves to revel in comes bursting out, because this shouldn't be that type of book, and this one shot is punctuated by incredible set pieces that really do harken back to what makes this character and honestly old Vertigo really great. So overall, 2 thumbs up. Next up, we have Chrononauts 2 Future Shock, and Mark Millar pulled a regular marketing stunt by releasing all the issues of this mini at the same time, and it kinda paid off, because it's really flimsy and really decompressed, and that would have shown if it was something you would have to wait monthly for. Putting it all out on the same day, it makes it come across as a breezy read, and it hits that mark more or less. I hated the first Chrononauts mini. I found it uninteresting, unengaging, and god-awfully soulless and detached. Something that surprised me, because even in his weaker volumes and series, Millar is able to hit some sort of heartening emotional tether more often than not, but not that one. It was just a hollow slog. The best thing about it is that the final issue finally let loose and was just incredibly insane and actually had some energy rather than just being dull. Future Shock pretty much takes that baton and the level it was at and rolls with it from the get-go. It's still not that great. It still doesn't have quite that much going for it, or even going on within it, but it has a whole lot of vitality and a simple but effective emotional weight. And that's pretty much the lowest bar I place from our lore books. And it reaches that mark, so good for it. I wish it was actually something substantial, something that you could actually really feel satisfied and intrigued by and walk away thinking that you read something that was an actual cohesive and rounded out story. But I was into it enough where I was at least a little bit immersed and interested in seeing where the characters and their bonds would go. It was predictable, but I was into it enough to see how that formula would play out again. Millar has planned for a final mini, and if it's at least this readable, I'll be back. So, one thumb up, one thumb middle. Moving ahead, we have A Basketful of Heads #1, and this is the series that I was most excited about with regards to Joe Hill's horror imprint from DC, and it didn't disappoint. If there's something that both Hill and Stephen King do wonderfully, it's knowing how to set the stage, how to create a comfy, serene, and smooth atmosphere that only ends up adding to the tension, suspense, and even creating its own terse sequences, because all a reader can do is wait for the other foot to drop, and Hill plays it like the pro he is. You get a great impression of the initial characters, all likable and hateable in their own unique way, and a perfect prologue that instills in the issue an immediate sense of dread and mood. It's wonderful, and it reminds me so much of the various crime comics that I've come to enjoy, where it's striking an entirely different genre mood, even though at the back of your mind you know that it's going to take some interesting turns to get to where it is in that prologue. But it never lets up the act, and it lets you get engaged with the characters, it lets you get attached to them, it lets you understand the dynamics, all you need to know to really feel invested, and that's really all you need for a horror story. You need to be invested in where it's going, you need to be invested in the characters, and you need to be invested in pretty much their emotional journeys, and so far this issue does all of that, and does it really well. It's a great issue, and even though the plot as it is hasn't gotten underway, it's already fulfilling in all the ways that matter, and I just can't say enough good things about it. I loved it, and I can't wait to see where this goes. 2 thumbs up. And lastly, we have Fantastic Four Grand Design #1 of a 2-issue miniseries. Tom Scioli races his way through about 50 issues of story in 40 pages, leaving thousands of panels in his wake, and it's kind of a trip. It's not the most coherent or consistent read at all, but it's a colorful, lively smorgasbord of sights and sounds. I wouldn't recommend it as a recap or as a history, but as a way to experience this era of the Fantastic Four through the hazy eyes of nostalgia and fandom. And it's a great comfort at doing that. Scioli keeps up a momentum through sly and wry panel juxtapositions and narrations, and it keeps its pace all the way through. It juggles so many different plot lines and characters, and like I said, it's pretty jumbled throughout it, but it has such a loving care for every single individual element, and that shines through, and that carries it even when you have like 10 different perspective and story switches per section of a page. If that's really what you're interested in, if that's what you want to see, just the history of this series, of these characters, just shotgunned onto 3 color pages, then go for it, because it's wonderful and fantastic at doing that. And I can't see anyone else but Scioli being able to pull that off. And I can't wait to see what the final issue has in store. Overall, 2 thumbs up. Now we can move on into what I watched this week. First off, we have Watchmen Episode 2, Martial Feats of Comanche Horsemanship. And I have to say, this was a lot more entertaining than the premiere. I'm still not completely behind it, but I do have to say that at least I wasn't tired by the end of it. It might be that I've had lowered expectations after last week, but this latest episode just had a bit more personality to it. It didn't feel quite like a standard police drama, and had some wacky and silly gags and set pieces, like an extended gag where a drama on television has an opening disclaimer that goes on for like 2 whole minutes, or this overly long sequence where the lord of the estate, as he's called, has his servants put on an incredibly pretentious play version of Dr. Manhattan's origins. It's mildly humorous and pretty effective. I dug that a lot more than the Chekhov plot beats of the pilot. There's still not a lot that's altogether memorable about it. It's just a steady drama. The intrigue is captivating in its own way, but I can't help but feel Lost vibes whenever I get excited or really invested in that. That's just periphery. It needs to have actual in-the-moment core substance, and so far I'm not really feeling that. I have some more hope at this point though. It has a bit more attitude than I thought it would, and the characters seem to have some heft to them. Maybe in time they'll show some depth and heart too. And I hope that we can move past that and get into something that actually says something and actually has definite emotional core to it. But, fingers crossed for that. Overall, 1 thumb up, 1 thumb middle. And lastly, we have Titans Season 2, episode, 10? Titled Atonement. And this is an episode that could have been good if they cut off 90% of it. I am definitely not feeling this season anymore. I'm just so bored and tired, and I feel like I'm just forcing myself to finish these episodes, and it's too late to really turn back. And if Titans gets to season 3, I probably won't be back for it because I just don't think that they know what they're doing. Like I said last week, this season has been functionally better, but it hasn't really been actually better. It's gotten a lot less entertaining, gotten a lot less engaging, and it just feels like it's going through the motions of what it thinks the drama should be. This episode actually starts off pretty good, where we think we might be getting a really solid character piece for Beast Boy, but instead it just decides to continue to cut through a lot more dragging and boring and dull subplots. And I feel like this is something that happened a lot with Gotham Season 1 as well, where Gotham Season 1 had this idea that it needed to show every single part of every single person's journey in every episode. So you would get about 5 different plots getting the minimalist of progression each episode. And even if one was really, really great, they would just be smushed and smothered and suffocated by everything else that was going on. And later seasons of Gotham actually got better at that, where you wouldn't see characters or you wouldn't have any actual subplots coming back again until the one at hand was actually dealt with and resolved in some way. And that's something that Titans should be doing. But we're not at that point yet, apparently. And so now we just have an episode that is honestly just too scattered and too boring to even finish. I honestly just did not care. There's some parts of this that are really entertaining, but overall it's just too dragged down and too bogged down by the things that aren't. And those are really more overpowering because there are things that should have been really either set up earlier before or dealt with earlier before or not even touched at all until the next season, because there's too much things going on right now and it's just not that interesting. It's not as interesting, it's not mysterious, and it's not as sort of captivating as the show kind of thinks it is. So even though there's 1 or 2 good scenes, I am just checked out. Overall, 1 thumb down, 1 thumb middle. And so we have no questions this week. And I just want to say thank you so much to everyone out there who has ever sent a question, comment, or topic. It means so much to me, and I'm just so grateful. And it's always just the most wonderful thing. So thank you so much. And I'm just so grateful for all of it. If anyone else out there has their own questions, comments, or topics, you can always send them in to me on Twitter at THE_SNICKMAN. And I just want to give a shout out to the cover artists for the show at DOTEMCEE. They're amazing. They're fantastic. Please check them out. They deserve all the traction they can get. And like I mentioned last week, the both of us contributed to this Ultraman Fan-Zine, which goes for about $10 on Gumroad. I'll post a link below. All the proceeds go to the Ultraman Foundation charity, which helps Japanese children in areas that have been hit by natural disasters. So please check it out. There are so many great artists and other more talented writers who contributed to this thing, and it's really great if you can spare it. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening, and well, hope you have a great week. And see you again next time.